Greetings, everybody. Welcome to the Friends of Einstein podcast, December episode. Delighted to have a great panel today. We have Haneen, Raphael, Jeremy, and John, and we're going to kick it off. We have a great agenda for you today. Let's go around the table really quickly, intro who you are, what you do, and we'll get going.
Yeah, so I'm Jeremy Ogden. I am working with a Salesforce implementation partner, Torrent Consulting, where I specialize in the manufacturing vertical, and I'm a newly minted Salesforce AI specialist certification holder.
Good deal. Over to you, Raphael.
Hey, Mark. So my name is Raphael. I've been into the Salesforce ecosystem for now 8 years, and I am a Salesforce solution architect.
Fantastic. Haneen.
Hello, everyone. Great to be here. I'm Haneen Arifai. I work as a data scientist with Experian and predicting fraud, and I'm happy to be here.
And John.
Thanks, Mark. I'm John Klein, and this is my 24th year in the Salesforce ecosystem. I have 13 certs, including the 2 AI ones we just have all recently received, I'm sure. And I am host of the podcast Salesforce Trails and Trials.
Awesome. Mark Brennan, I'm the founder and head of Kynoch Labs, is a Salesforce partner specializing in Einstein Data Cloud and now Agentforce, and also a recently minted AI specialist. I want to thank you all for joining today. This is really great. Let's just restate the purpose of the podcast. It's really, we want to tell stories about what we're seeing in our various respective universes related to Einstein, any kind of AI implementation really. But as the name suggests, Friends of Einstein, we're really kind of married to the Salesforce platform and what we're seeing related to that. So, today we've got a fairly diverse agenda and a diverse group of panelists, but really we have a lot of Salesforce expertise here, and we're at the front of the wave. We're seeing, we're observing what we're seeing, where a lot of companies and a lot of consulting partners are not here yet. So we're in a very fortunate position, but we don't know everything. So there's a lot we're just learning as we go here. Such an exciting place to be. Let's just frame this a little bit then. So we'll talk about trends in 2024, forecasts for 2025, a little bit of a few statistics that we can throw in and talk about. We'll go into an overview of the Salesforce AI products available today and what's coming up. We're going to, in terms of industries and markets, I think we're probably more leaning towards mid-market, but it really doesn't matter if you have an experience related to a very large enterprise, that's fine too, or if it's related to academia, or that's fine too. It's just that I think that most of what we're serving is kind of mid-market companies from 100 or so employees to a couple of thousand employees. We'll go through some tales from the wild in terms of what we're seeing in terms of current projects and implementations, success stories, and we'll talk about some tips for any business leader, CIO, VP of operations looking to get started with Agentforce. Okay. So in terms of 2024, who wants to kick it off in terms of a few words to describe 2024 as it's coming to an end? What's the view from your seat?
It's been a strange one, Mark. In terms of the plans for business, it's not gone exactly to plan, though we've seen business pick up quite a bit towards the tail end of the year, but it's kind of been a little bit of a roller coaster this year.
Yep. A lot of softness in the market, right? Probably not related to Salesforce directly, but definitely the Salesforce universe felt it. The tech layoffs left a lot of people kind of unexpectedly freed up, and the consulting firms kind of followed suit. I think they were just seeing less demand and fewer projects getting, greenlit. Was there, I think that, for much of the year, there was global uncertainty about wars and supply chain. There's also national sort of US uncertainty of just waiting for the election, see what happens. And then there's a strange kind of new energy in the air at the moment, just like, well, I think we're going to be okay. Let's just go. And so there are some projects just kicking off now, or at least making noises to say, well, let's pick that up again and let's see if we can get it started in January, right? What is at the same time, Agentforce was released in October. There was no Agentforce conversation even in September. I think very few people outside of Salesforce even knew Agentforce existed in September. So really, it's late in the year. What do you guys think of this? Have they hit target? Is this a game changer?
Hey, Mark, can I add something here? Right after the Agentforce 2.0, the CEO of Salesforce, Mark, was telling that right now they already closed 1,000 deals, enterprise deals, and 50% of Salesforce pipeline has AI on the pipeline. So I think next year will be amazing if they can close those deals, right? And if we as a consultant, we're upfront, leading these new AI Agentforce, we'll be much better than this year, I guess.
I believe so. And that's a great statistic. We've seen that in headlines. Mark Benioff talking about. There was also another number that he threw out was 100 million agents by a certain date next year. And I think he also threw out 1 billion agents for a later date. I don't have that number in front of me, but it looked extremely aggressive. You pair that with, the Salesforce partner program is attempting to kind of standardize the quick entry into this. The quick start thing is a thing called Activator. And the idea, the template is that you can get an agent up and running in 5 weeks, as little as 5 weeks. So it's kind of like a template project plan for companies to get their first agent going. What do you guys think of this?
I personally think it's really valuable because if you think of where Agentforce came from, it came from essentially the prompt builder and the somewhat DIY process that they started talking to us last year at Dreamforce about. And so there's many people who dove into that and just really found struggles. They found challenges with the output they were receiving. And so I really think, one, it was a really important course correction for Salesforce to be really clear and honest about, what, we think we maybe, learned a lot and we want to take that learning that we know you learned with us. And so thank you for the efforts. And now we're going to put you into, a model that's going to be much more straightforward. I think Activator is tremendous. I think what they've done with, for example, providing the Coral Cloud app as a point where you can go in and you can digest all of those dimensions and figure out behind the scenes how it's all set up, but it's largely all done and working for you, has been tremendously helpful in giving those enablement tools to kind of on-ramp. Because I don't know if you guys have had it, but as I dive into AI, and I've been in the tech world for 2 decades, the amount of terminology and layers and, dovetailing and new concepts that I've had to learn to dig into AI has been really, really significant. And I love learning. For the normal person, I could see how that has been overwhelming and maybe even a little, allergy producing.
Yes, absolutely. Haneen, from your point of view, you're less of a Salesforce, expert and solution architect. You're a data scientist. You're our guest data scientist. How's it viewed from your seat in terms of, as you look to the market in 2024 and trends and movements, and are you seeing Salesforce breaking through here, or are you kind of, you don't, from your seat, they're really just another player in the market?
Yeah, so I believe that there's a lot of changes going on in terms of data science. Even data science itself is kind of shifting more towards the prompt engineering and then the Gen AI work, where everyone is trying to compete and get into the game of Gen AI and having their own GPTs in-house. So I think that Salesforce, Agentforce would be an amazing tool to be able to revamp this energy and be able to get there in the market as well.
Right. Then you offer my thought here on, especially for the benefit of anyone listening who doesn't really know exactly what Agentforce is and where does it fit into the world. It's a catchphrase that Salesforce has been using that I think we can kick it off with is they say, don't DIY your AI. That's a kind of a clunky sentence, but it's brilliant. So I think what they're saying here is don't train your own model. Don't go spend millions of dollars on a data lake that you already have. You've already got Snowflakes or Databricks or something else. You don't go training your own data to attach it to a large language model and then go through all of the rigmarole. You're going to spend years doing this, and your chances of your probability of success is this is your first time doing this. Don't do this. So what they've really done is they had Salesforce Copilot. They had Einstein Copilot. What Agentforce really is, it's like the final link in the chain that pulls together all of the reasoning engine, the Atlas reasoning engine, the APIs that call any large language model whichever one you want to work with today, you just flip the switch, you connect to that one. The prompt builder that's been around for a little while. Einstein itself has been around for almost 10 years now. Amazing. So they're putting together all of these building blocks into Agent Builder, which allows you to move into agentic AI. And that's really what's relevant to a business leader. Really, when you think about it, when the chief revenue officer or the COO wakes up in the morning and they ask themselves, what matters to me today, this month, this year? It's not a ChatGPT announcement. It's not an OpenAI announcement or an Anthropic, performance leap against the others. That doesn't really affect us day to day. What really affects us is the ability to put together a digital workforce by means of agents that actually do useful tasks for us that humans don't have time to do or don't have the bandwidth to do, and to have a seamless handoff to a human when that agent has run out of its designed scope. Oh, I'm not supposed to handle that. I'm supposed to give that back to you. Here you are. Right? What are your guys' thoughts on this? I mean, how is that well defined in terms of, where we are and what matters? What do we want to add to that?
I think it's well defined. And what helps me think about this is I just consider trying to get into the persona and mindset of a typical Salesforce buyer. So you think about, like a telco organization, and wow, the impact when they moved to something of a self-service model where they put up, a place where they could have articles and it was somewhat intelligent when people asked the questions. It would intuit a little bit with maybe type ahead find or going beyond even keyword searching to maybe a little bit of some vector searching or some semantic kind of alignment to figure out like, this is probably what you're looking for. And now people could solve their problems in the middle of the night. They could solve them on a Sunday afternoon. And that would reduce their call volume into their call centers by 20, 30%. That really moves the needle for their organization. Now, none of those articles could actually do anything, right? They couldn't really, maybe there's a decision tree here and there. Maybe they allowed, or they forwarded someone to another research kind of location, but they couldn't really do anything. And I think the benefit here is extending that and saying, well, what if self-service could now actually gather some data and help you give a more specific response? Maybe it could actually perform some actions for you within the context of the bot, right? Recording some of your decision making or gathering some basic information so that when I do hand it off, it's now an enriched conversation and it's not just that dreaded, yeah, I'm here, I'm John, I'm here to help you. Did you hear anything about the previous person I spoke to? Well, no,
right.
But I'm here to help you. And so to me, there is an aspect where when I think about the handoff from that self-service this is where it really starts to take over and to start being a little bit more thoughtful. And I love the way that they've laid it out with the ability to put boundaries on that thoughtfulness around topics and things to make sure that we're not being creative about areas that I'm not designated. Like you as the human have not delegated to me like discussing psychological topics with these people. I'm here to help with order management and order status and returns. And
exactly.
That's what I'm going to stick with.
Right.
Right. I think it's brilliant the way that they've done this. And I totally agree with the prior point of trying to connect the dots and set up the infrastructure, even with all of the various web services and such that are available, is quite a gigantic task. And they've laid it out right, with a nice vertical solution that enables a configuration-based approach, which I have not seen anywhere else in the
marketplace. That is correct. I mean, I'm happy to be wrong here, but I'm not aware of any enterprise software platform able to come even close in terms of offering an autonomous agent that uses your enterprise data to solve problems. Are you guys aware of them?
I'm not. And I do want to highlight one element that you just mentioned to complement what I just said was the complementary agent, that the agent doesn't have to be public facing. And I think this is really important as we think of use cases in 2025, that the best use cases that are the most safe for the allergic, or we'll talk about, I know in our show later, we're going to talk about some of the headwinds and some of the anxieties that people have. Those internal use cases. So the idea, for example, of taking 10 years of email and being able to put it into Data Cloud and now having that agent be there so that I can ask and say, hey, what do we know about this? And it's going to go through all those emails and provide wisdom to me about all the conversations we've had over the last 10 years. That is tremendously valuable.
In fact, yesterday in the Agentforce 2.0 event, I think most of us were watching that, right? There was an incredible example with Denise Dresser and Slack. And she painted a picture of the Sunday scaries where you've been on vacation for a week and you've just got this mountain of stuff you haven't read and you're wondering, what have you missed? And you're asking Slack, hey, where's that? I forget the name of the account, but where's that ABC? What's happening with that ABC account? And it summarizes a giant blob of a week's worth of information, and it tells you like 6 things that matter. There you are.
Yeah, from information that's in
from different locations. Absolutely, it pulled it from everywhere. It pulled documents. It pulled presentations. Very, very impressive. And when you think about it, that is a massive stress reliever for as a senior person who has been away for a little while and has a lot of reading to do on Sunday night. So that was a really excellent example.
I think to add on to what you've highlighted there, John, that it's not just an external facing tool, it's an internal tool. I think Salesforce has really done well in positioning this tool as not something that's going to just eliminate jobs of people, but it's going to add value to the customer experience. And being able to take those emails that have the correspondence between a customer and say the customer support function at a company and summarize those interactions, summarize the most recent purchases, summarize the preferences of the individual. So when I'm interacting with your company, you already have at your fingertips everything you need to know. You don't need to ask me more questions. So it'll really, in theory, enhance the overall customer experience and add to the overall customer engagement.
And to add something here as well, like, for example, in my case, let's say I'm going into the enterprise, I'm a new hire. I would like to know about the data, about the schemas, about everything, the attributes, the data types, in terms of like the data science to be able to apply something on this data. So having that knowledge available instead of having someone to spend the time out of their work hours to train me, that would be an amazing use case here. It would be very helpful.
I have a couple of stats here. Let's throw in a couple of stats and see what discussion they trigger. So I actually got most of these from Salesforce's stats library, which is possibly church and state not very separated, but it's still useful numbers. 48% of service first, let's talk about service first. 48% of service professionals said generative AI will improve customer self-service options. 47% said it will help automate customer service communications. And 46% said it would help analyze service data. So service is obviously the first place here for for agents and for Gen AI to jump in. What are your guys' comments? What are you seeing? Raphael, what are you seeing?
For service, because I guess that's how people envision AI for a company is going to the service or the agent, right? A chatbot, whatever it might be. So I think that I think those data is still too low. If they understood that, probably those numbers will be way higher than that. So probably those that got interview or replied to this survey, they still don't understand the power of AI, especially for the agent AI, that can take so much action, actually act as a real agent on the database of Salesforce and doing so much for them. That's my takeaway, I guess, in this number.
Why are those numbers so low? Yeah. Haneen, what do you think? I mean, are those numbers surprisingly low?
They sure are. Again, another use case here. If you have your platform or software being sold to customers or clients and you want them to have more knowledge about that software, this is a way to, like carry them on and get them up to speed and using that your software. So it's a major plus to have this agent, and I think companies do not know the actual value of this.
I mean, we've had two blog posts go out in the last month, both talking from slightly different angles about how the customer support experience is ripe to get thrown out and just replaced with just revolutionized. So we don't like waiting. We don't like wait time. We don't like phone tree where you press a number to go to the wrong place. We don't like having to explain the whole thing again to a person who is probably in a faraway country. And, so there's none of that experience is all that great. So we're ready. We're so ready to help revolutionize this. And yet, we go looking for stats on what's happening. We're really not seeing this yet. What do you guys think? How ready are we to revolutionize case logging, case creation, and case resolution? Resolution.
The demand of the customer, I think, is a really important driver. And to also dovetail your prior question about why are these statistics so low, I think if you were to go and maybe filter those results by only the people who have previously used ChatGPT or Gemini or these very other services for their own use, and actually recognized that it's not that someone else would have just gone to this tool and replaced my role. It's that this complemented my role, and I was able to then kind of upthink my response to them and be more effective in what it is that I gave. That I think those numbers would be tremendously higher because it overcomes what I believe there's a lot of anxiety and even kind of technical prejudice, if you will, against AI because of the uncertainty. And people don't want to contribute to what they perceive as role erosion or staff diminishment or these other aspects. So I absolutely believe it is ripe. I mean, if you think of in the marketplace of products and services, you have significant concentration. There's a lot because distribution is so great among the internet connected world. It yields a winner take all kind of model. If one person has the absolute best product or service, globally, they can dominate. And that brings a host of complexities around how do you service these models in all of the languages and all of the cultural dimensions and all of the time zones. So the demand of all of those people is that there needs to be something with some intelligence that enables me to advance and make progress on what it is that I'm doing at any time on all sorts of subjects. And ultimately then now I'm only focused on escalations from time to time that might be specific to a locality or a product or a particular complexity. So I agree with you. I think it's absolutely ripe. And I think the benefits for an organization who now is able to serve people across all of those different regions and time zones in a way that doesn't ask really, really significantly what I would say is like family punishing times that people have to be working and really challenging requests that they're going to make of their staff. I just think it's the way it's pitched and the clarity of how it's rolled out and highlighting how this is of tremendous benefit because somebody still needs to handle all those escalations. Somebody still needs to deal with all those complexities. It's just moving what I call upthinking, right? It's moving the nature of the work up in the echelon of expertise.
You're upvaluing your current employees, right? I mean, I personally think that all call center employees are the taxi drivers and, oh, here comes Uber. It's just ripe for that. That experience is broken. And so we're not enjoying it. But we do enjoy when we ask a more complicated question and, just fast forward a year and the agent is helping you with the basic ones. And then you ask them a harder question and it just gives up on you pretty quickly. And it says, I'm going to connect you to, Angelina here, who's going to take it from here. And then that upvalued employee is going to find the answer. So I think that's really hopefully where we're headed. We're going to Uberize the call center employees. I was not able to find many stats on customer experience. There are lots of stats on e-commerce, right? We know. I think we're already there in terms of product recommendations and just generally helping e-commerce. I don't know if we have much to it. Does anyone here have kind of new news or comments we don't know on particularly e-commerce? I think it's just kind of, it's got momentum and we kind of know where it's going, right? It's really about helping the shopper and making product recommendations, and it's heading in a good direction, right? Whereas, customer experience, I mean, there are a lot of, not many stats, but lots of articles talking about how agents are going to be able to concierge an entire experience for you. And, Dreamforce talked about that as we sat and built agents for the resort. And, the customer is connecting to, just by text message is connecting to change the plan a little bit, get out of one booking and change it to something else, and then ask for recommendations for what to do on Tuesday afternoon. This is amazing. What do you guys think? What do you see happening here?
Well, I have another example that spans both of these that I've just begun learning about. I don't have the specific company yet, but the idea of customer experience and on the e-commerce example is we think about, kind of inquiries and retrievals as being a key part of AI. This one really focuses on understanding a customer's preference and appetite for detail. And so essentially you can track, for example, let's think of an e-commerce website, right? If you think about a typical product page, it has a photo, a basic summary, and then it has different links if I want to see more detail, if I want a white paper on the subject, if I want to kind of go through and look at, additional knowledge-based detail about how this might be used or other things like that. As a customer, that detail is tracked based on what my behavior is. And because of that, there's an augmented nature of the content. So if it sees that I rarely ever click on any of those additional detail links, it begins to change and give me a better summary. So rather than require me to click on those links, it starts to gather key details and summarize that right in my product presentation summary, knowing that I never click on any of those links anyway, but there is some key information that would be helpful for me. So AI starts to bring that forward up into my basic product description because it knows me and my behavior, that I never click on any of those links, although it would be important for me to do so. So it starts to surface some of that information into the basic summary level. So that has both a CX and kind of an e-commerce component as an example. And you can also think about other preferences that might be in my profile. It might say that I'm a high-tech person versus a low-tech person, right? That I have specific uses for these products, like I like to use them indoors versus outdoors, or I like to take them on my camping trips. And it can augment how it describes the product based on my particular preference and how I might use the product. So the idea of having a general description that's the same and generic for everyone moves now into a more complementary perspective where it's going to summarize the information, gather the detail, and even bring in a little bit of my usage components into how it's describing the product to me to help it make sense to see if it's really a good fit.
That's excellent. That's terrific, John. Let's talk a little bit about, so, the currently available products in the lineup here. The first one available is Service Agent, right? This week's announcement talked about Agentforce 2.0, which really focused on, I thought it was going to be other Salesforce products, just getting their own specific agents. And it's really broader than that. It's Agentforce for everyone. And it's really jumping beyond the CRM boundaries. Go out to SAP to get something, answer that question. Go out to Workday, get something else. Go anywhere, really anywhere where as long as you have the API connections. And then, of course, Slack was really interesting. Agentforce 3 is going to come out in May. There's going to be a few things come out early next year in between 2 and 3. I think we're going to start seeing more cloud-specific, Salesforce product-specific agents come out. So the next wave of sales, next wave of marketing. What do you guys think? And what do you know that the public doesn't know?
I think personally it'll be really interesting to see. I haven't used Agentforce obviously in this capacity because it's not GA yet, but as an SDR to develop your sales pipeline and to, continuously refine those leads and use it to move that process along, 24/7 really, and get some qualified opportunities in there before it even gets to a person.
So it's both internal facing, so it's coaching the SDR and the seller, but it's also outside facing to be able to message directly to your prospect and to kind of map who's who at the account and send them the appropriate personalized message, right?
Yeah.
So need to get to a certain level of, we're going to talk about challenges and difficulties in a few minutes, and we're going to get into that because that's going to raise a lot of questions for our clients as they start to mull those possibilities. It sounds very exciting, but at the same time, it raises some questions. Very good. So, where is the mid-market in all this? So, we've already said this last time that, the global 1,000 companies are deep into their journey here. And a lot has been spent, and a lot has been done already. But your average mid-market company outside of the S&P 500, Fortune 500, maybe hasn't really got anything yet other than a few employees sitting on ChatGPT. That's consumer AI, totally different topic, right? I'm seeing, in my conversations with Salesforce account execs, I'm seeing that healthcare and life sciences has a lot of movement. There are some Agentforce projects happening to help healthcare organizations. And so this is very exciting. What's happening in FinServe? What's happening in manufacturing, retail? Where is the mid-market in this? We know it's been slow, and most of this year, nothing. And now there's some action. What are you seeing, Jeremy?
Yeah, we've been selected as one of the partners to do one of the initial implementations of Agentforce, and are already seeing an HLS client implement it. I can't speak to the specific use case, but it's certainly exciting to see that we've already got traction just a couple months in.
Really good. And what industry is that in?
It's in health and life sciences.
Right. Okay. It makes perfect sense, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, especially the way that you can protect through Salesforce trust layer. You can protect that personal identifiable information and not worry about the risk of exposing clients' patients' data.
It wasn't that long ago where having any HIPAA data in Salesforce was kind of a no-no. It was a lot of people opposed that. They solved that problem really well. I think 14, 15 years ago, at least 12 years ago. But now masking, demasking, prompt defense, all of these tools that are here. We'll talk about, the difficulties. We're kind of moving to that in a few minutes. We'll talk about, where is this a little harder than we expected. But at least, the tools are here now for us to mask that data and assure our chief compliance officer or our chief information security officer or whoever it is that's kind of, being hawkish about the movement of data and the unintended sharing of data. We can show them this is how it works. We can actually prove this is what's happening to the masking and the demasking when the response comes back, which is terrific, right?
Another example of the mid-market is lots of field service organizations. So think about, your AC contractors, plumbers, electricians. I think there's been a lot of impact of field service. And I believe there's a lot of great use cases out there to help people when they're in the field and, gather the right information they need, see the similar use cases, leverage that kind of semantic search rather than just keyword searching through lots of knowledge bases, product information, because the customer is expecting them to solve that on that visit. And so I believe there's going to be a lot of great, and I've been, seeing some traction there on the field service side. And there's a lot of those companies who are in that same mid-market space.
The possibilities there are giant, aren't they? I mean, just imagine having a central brain that knows where everyone is, and how it's going and what they need. So Fred over here is stuck in traffic. It's going to be 35 minutes late. Tommy over there is missing the part that he needs for his next call. And to be able to, for humans to work that out is obviously slow. And then every human working in that scenario is necessarily single tasking. You have to fix this one before you even move to that one. Whereas just imagine having agents kind of figure out those things. You can just, from your car, just send text to, to whatever name you gave to your agent.
Correct. Not to mention all of the exceptions that you might have while you're there, right? I need a new bracket. I need a tire. I need to know where is the fastest place I could get this to know whether it's this visit or another visit. There's so many inquiries that happen while someone is actually trying to just get the work done. And then all of the learning you can have after the fact, because most of that data is unstructured. Right. Much of it does come into fields, but a lot of it is unstructured. It's in documents. It's in, there's manifests and there's different kind of materials. It's in photos. There's lots of insight that happened on site that is just very difficult to glean and make, kind of productively useful for future endeavors because of its unstructured nature. So I think AI offers a tremendous value to the companies.
So I think we're in agreement here that, especially the mid-market, because it's kind of indicative of where the world is and where the thinking is at, that there is some excitement now that the front of the wave is actually now picking up and it is moving. We can't expect every business leader to be an inventor or a visionary or an early adopter. So this is going to be a bell curve of early adopters, kind of, the middle group, and then there'll be laggards. That's fine. That happened with SaaS. That happened with, the initial internet, of course. Let's talk about data. We said, in our last episode, we said that, for agent AI, the data quality is less important. If you're doing predictive AI or insight kind of AI, your data quality really needs to be very good. I don't know, 97%? Well, I don't know what it needs to be. It needs to be very good. Otherwise, your predictions they don't have a chance. But with agent AI, you could have like 50% of your accounts and contacts data could be not very good at all, right? You could have you didn't clean up your junk leads very well, and you didn't clean up your inactive accounts very well at all. But this contact who's interacting with your agent today, as long as their records and adjacent related records are in pretty good shape, and as long as your products and prices and services and all of the data that you're going to be querying to help this case, as long as that data is in pretty good shape, you can have millions of bad leads, millions of defunct contacts, orphaned contacts. It doesn't matter, because that's not what your agent is touching today. Is that a dangerous statement? Is that a true statement? Or what do you guys think?
I'd dare to say it kind of depends on the use case there, because you're taking a pretty big leap to say if that person who's contacting you has the correct data, because what happens if they don't? When you're building the agent and you're building a flow to grab the records related to that particular individual, internal or external, if that data isn't there, you might cause the agent to hallucinate if it's not grounded well.
Right. So high quality data is never a bad idea, right? So, however, it used to be a gating factor for Einstein predictions and for any kind of predictive AI. Now, I'm suggesting it might be just a little bit less of a gating factor, but it's still, and the reason I'm bringing this up is, what are you guys seeing when traditional testing and project management techniques just not going to work when you're building agents for a client and you're about to deploy them. So you can't just do acceptance testing over a few days and say, okay, that looks good. You're going to get unpredictable results. We're seeing unpredictable results in our own internal efforts and also, for our clients. It's how you ask the question. All the instructions are built in natural language. And we ask exactly the same question as we did yesterday. And today it says, I'm sorry, I can't help you with that. So we hit a guardrail somewhere. The instruction was told to not execute. Why? And so we need to be able to explain what happened. What are you guys seeing? Who's got a good anecdote on that you've seen recently, where you need to be able to explain some unexpected behavior or outcome?
I think when it comes to preventing the agents from hallucinating, there's a lot of limitations and guardrails in terms of what to reply with or what to not reply with. So therefore, the difference in results right now. So to improve those agents, those are the limitations that are put in when training those models. So that's why we see different results and less of hallucination, basically, or like getting information out of nowhere.
Yes. So what happens when I'm asking a very simple one? I might be asking Einstein Copilot to summarize an account for me. And I just give it the account name. Now, if I happen to know there are two accounts with the same name, it's not a duplicate. It's just they might be two related accounts under one parent, but the Agentforce didn't know that. So I understand if it comes back and says, give me more information. So then I change my question and I give it enough information to say, ABC, ABC retailers out of this town, out of this city. And then it can identify the account. And one time it gives me a really nice summary table of the account. And then I ask the same question again 5 minutes later, and it says, I'm sorry, I can't help you with that. So what am I doing wrong? We're experimenting with this, and we're experiencing this sometimes. So we go back to the prompt, we go back to the topics, we go back to the actions, and we look at, we change the language slightly to experiment with what's happening. What are you guys seeing? What are your experiences here? Raphael, have you had any unpredictable behavior that you need to troubleshoot?
Not in any QA that I was part of, Mark. So I don't know. Maybe just follow what you said. Go to the setup of the agent or the copilot prompt builder and try to change the LLM and make better.
Yep. Switch to a different LLM.
Yeah.
I think we're going to get smarter at testing these things, aren't we? So we're already in a couple of interesting conversations where, the client is saying, why did it do that? And we don't want to make an incorrect statement, or we don't want to just hazard a guess. So we say, we're looking into it, and come back and, the next day or whenever, and we point to what we think, can be done, or we played around with it. We changed some of the language in the, in the model, in the prompt, or in the topics, and with not happening as much. So that's the best answer we've been able to give so far. We played with it. We changed the natural language just a little bit. It's not happening as much, but it still happened once. Talk to the client in that way. What can you add to that? Jeremy, have you had to explain some?
Just in testing, we've gotten some hallucination. So yeah, you go back, you refine your prompt to better ground it. And I think specifying not to create an answer if you don't have the data, don't create an answer, which is kind of interesting that we actually have to specify that. You'd think that kind of is included in the default, but it's not at this point. So there's that. But I think also it's great that we have the data on the records on what information Salesforce is grabbing to actually provide an answer, what the thought process is in providing an answer, so you can kind of figure out exactly what happened there.
Are you guys finding the audit trail useful in explaining why it did that?
I find it useful, although I think it speaks to the larger kind of non-deterministic nature that is one of the anxieties that people have about AI, in that it's not, when you're debugging a flow, for example, you're going to have a variable error. You're going to have a null variable error. You're going to be able to quickly know, like, oh, that's why, because the pick list values don't match, or whatever it might be. AI is much more of, there's that old German phrase called Gestalt. You guys remember that, right? Where it's kind of like you get a sense that this is going in the right direction. This is leading to the right sense. So there are some aspects, like you talk about, sometimes a topic will be hit, sometimes it won't, and you have to figure out how to get it back in. but there definitely is an expectation management process first of knowing what you're going to be entering into, and even with what you're seeing, because it's not like an audit. The audit trail isn't like the typical setup audit trail. It's not like the flow audit trail. And it's important that people recognize that and contrast it with, but you're also getting all of these amazing benefits of a thinking piece of software that's helping to evaluate and come to these elements, right? So the trade-off is tremendously different, and the upside is much more valuable, but it does come with some unique elements. So one thing I'll highlight here is I think what Salesforce has done with the test center for Agentforce is really brilliant. By trying to not only allow predictions for what the agent is doing, but even using the same prediction model to test against the agent, which then also saves the customer a little bit of money on those requests that are going back out to the LLM, because Salesforce pays for those whether they're in testing or production, which is another anxiety for moving to a metered model versus a per seat model, right? That people have to just get used to. But the use cases, I think, still make it quite valuable to do so. But the model that they've done there, I think, is really, really helpful in helping to say, in a deterministic model, you have to write out all of your test cases. Even in a robotic testing model, you have to tell it specifically what you want it to do and what the boundaries are. Whereas in this case, they're going to help contrive and imagine those elements of what we're testing against, because it's based on human behavior, which is a wide horizon. And I think that's very helpful and will, provide a lot of value for people trying to toe into this and really validate that, okay, is this moving in the right direction? And just like we've seen with, the latest Waymo data that found that it's immensely safer than even the best and most modern human-driven car. In this case, I think people will find, if we compare it to humans who are trying to answer these same elements, our humans are making mistakes. Our humans are leading people to the wrong location. They're accidentally providing outdated information. And so having that more reasonable comparison to say, we're not comparing against perfection. We're comparing against our human counterparts and seeing if we can improve both their experience and what they provide, as well as the agent's experience, what they're providing ahead of time.
This is excellent. Haneen, I know that you're the one with the knowledge on this. So imagine we have an experience that's personalized based on contact, an account, a few factors. We have, industry, revenue bucket, employee count bucket. Do we say industry? And job title, right? So a job type, for example. So groups of job titles. And it's personalized based on that. And guess what? We're getting some unpredictable results because, of course, like any normal organization, some of our values are missing. Well, some accounts don't have industry populated. Some don't have anything for either the employee or the revenue bucket. So we're leaving the agent to kind of, it's running we haven't trained it on what to do. And once we realize that it's actually a data problem, what kind of suggestions do you have for that exact problem where the agent isn't misbehaving? It's actually just doesn't have the data, 25% of the time, it's just actually missing some of those factors.
Yeah, so absolutely, you need to go back to the data itself and improve the data quality. I know Agentforce, as you mentioned, works with like a quality of 50%, but imagine when the quality is 75% or more than that. So when you improve that quality, look into missing values, for example, and find solutions for missing values. Let's say apply techniques like the mean median imputations or KNN imputations.
What is that for people who don't know what it is? Tell us what it is.
So a mean median, like having an average for some missing value, you can extract that average based on the rest of the values in that attribute or that column of that attribute. Or when it comes to KNN, kind of like it's a model where you get the nearest neighbors or a number of nearest neighbors and try to predict that value based on the values of those nearest neighbors. and then fill in those gaps with those values. So there are multiple techniques here that can be used also based on correlations with other variables like regression imputations. So multiple techniques can be applied to fill in those gaps, and then retrain your LLM based on a better quality data, and then you'll see a huge difference in results for sure.
And in this case, with Agentforce, we're actually kind of most of the time we're masking the data from the LLM. We're not training the LLM at all, but we're using enterprise data to create a prompt. Then we're masking the private data, having the LLM give us the answer, and then we're demasking on the way back. But still, the data quality is a big factor, right? If the behavior is not coming back as expected, and it's because of the data, then Salesforce is going to tell you, oh, you don't need data scientists on this. You just build an agent. But the reality is most companies have data quality issues. 25% dirty it's actually a pretty good day for a company, much worse than that, right? So K-nears, for example, and KNN, in a practical way, what would I be doing if I'm missing an industry for this record? So KNN could actually go and kind of figure out similar neighbors and just guess that. Am I putting a value in industry, or am I using another field where it's just guess industry or like KNN industry?
Yeah, so it is basically finding based on the distance between that row and the other rows. And then you, of course, specify the number of neighbors that you're going to compare with. And then you find that distance. And based on that distance, the first, for example, let's say we pick 2 neighbors, and that there's this category 1 for first neighbor, category 2 for second neighbor. And then at the end, you have probability for which one to go with based on that distance, and then you're going to fill in your missing value with the one that had the highest vote or the highest probability. So that's a model embedded within the prediction,
which is really impressive mathematics, right? So that's but I guess what happens the next day, if I look at that record, how do I know that the industry in this record was not captured by my CRM as a actual value? It was actually my data scientist mathematics that populated that. Do I need to know that maybe I'm just guessing on this value?
I don't think you would know, since it would be already a filled field. So it's, instead of it not giving you a result when you're asking it a question, the agent that is, it's gonna give you an answer instead, because you pre-trained on this model. Yeah.
Very good. Let's move into just tips for organizations who are getting started with this, or they're thinking of getting started. So they have no AI today other than a few employees using, Claude or ChatGPT to help them out with something. So there's really no enterprise AI at all. And they're thinking of building 1 or 2 or 3 agents over the coming months, and they think they've got a couple of use cases in mind. And where do you want to start, Jeremy? What do you want to throw in as the first tip?
The first agent that they should build, or
yeah, they don't have any agents yet, so they're just about to kick off a project. And how should they approach this? And what are some pearls of wisdom that we can offer?
Yeah, I mean, it really depends on companies' needs and the requirements there. I would say totally, again, depending on that information, that requirement. But let's say that you're an organization that wants to improve your case completion rate, the speed at which you're closing cases. I think if you have an agent just internally working to help complete cases, to reach out to customers, maybe there's been a stalled response rate from the customer to actually follow up and get those cases closed. That would be a good use case. But again, there's so many different use cases that you can solve here.
One thing that would be, I think, a really good idea for any organization as its first Agentforce project would be to start really simple. Just if you don't call it a pilot or a proof of concept, because it's gonna work, but make it just one agent or maybe two and solve a true business problem with it, but keep it very contained so that you're able to get from here to there reasonably quickly and without a great deal of effort and expense. And you're able to then just assess it and say, well, hopefully you're going to say, yeah, that works. That met our expectations. It's deployed and we're happy with it. Of course, it can evolve, it can improve, but you got it up and running in a reasonably, the Salesforce template project, there is like 5 weeks or less to get that running. I really like that. And, some organizations might be tempted to, scope creep that into 20 agents in their first round of build. And the problem with that is that you're not going to be able to explain why you got what you got. You're not going to be able to go back through the audit trail and explain why you didn't get what you wanted in that case resolution or in that case creation, or even if it isn't cases, even if it's something else, you're looking for a booking, reservation change or whatever the use case may be. If you've got 20 of them, I really think you're going to struggle to point to what needs to be adjusted to get the behavior you want.
I think just to add to that, Jeremy's response is great for the organization that maybe has already made the decision that they're going to move towards in kind of an agent complementary environment. I think the majority of mid-market organizations, just as anecdotal, are not at that point today, that they're struggling with, okay, is this something we really need to pay attention to? And if so, when and to what degree? And I think they look to their staff to help make that decision. And if they're not people who are using consumer AI at all, the general consensus is probably not. Don't want to talk about it. Don't want to think about it. So I think in the same way that Salesforce 4 years ago, when they started talking big about digital transformation, the idea was, let's first build a vision inside the organization about where things are going, what is the customer demand, right? Like, where is the product growth and kind of organizational growth for our business, and what kind of gaps does this create? So people start seeing, okay, I see. There's a greater number of people who want information from us at 4 a.m. That's something I didn't really consider. I mean, this goes way back in 2007. I gave a Dreamforce presentation with Craig Schwinsrud and a couple other guys, and it's your website, right? The hub of marketing. And we talked about the 24/7 landscape of where people are online. And so I think crafting a vision for that is really important, and getting people on board, laying down some of those anxieties and settling some of those questions, and then enlisting people to say, all right, will you help us kind of craft a vision for this? The second aspect I think people should do is say, look, let's not start with the agent. Let's get comfortable with basic Einstein capabilities that have been around for 5 or 10 years. Maybe we're not using like basic Einstein service or case responses today. You know that it's providing you options, it's showing you the response, and you can choose whether you want to use the response or not. But isn't that helpful? And then finding maybe there's a prediction or two that might be helpful, right? Maybe there's an aspect of, some case routing that's being case sentiment. Some of these elements can start to be, kind of first base, second base elements to get our batting average up inside the organization, where people start to see, all right, this actually is really helpful. It's not scary. It's not taking my job. And maybe encouraging people to say, hey, here's a couple ways that you might, when you're on the phone with a customer, that, a little OpenAI or a ChatGPT question might help you solve it, right? Or maybe here's a more intelligent knowledge base that we put together on Salesforce that's now making semantic connections, and it's going to help you be more effective in your job. I think if you get your batting average up with that, and you're providing a vision, the idea of saying, if you, for example, if you, Joe, were working at this organization and you're going to work 24 hours in a day, after close of business on 5 p.m., on a Friday, tell me what you think, what kind of inquiries are you going to get from people? Who's going to be calling you, and what are they going to be asking you? And you ask a few people in different departments that question. And to say, great, okay, if that's all happening, how valuable would it be for our business to be able to answer 5%? of those inquiries, right? And without having you have to work 24 hours. Does anybody else think that might be valuable? And if we could get 5% to 10% to 20%, what would that do for our business now? In volume, in growth, in basically looking at today's modern age, right? Time to response is a massive competitive advantage. How does that help us box out our competitors and bring more business our way, which only deepens the opportunity for our ROIs to extend?
Agree. Very good, John. I was asking really more about those organizations who have made their mind up. They're going forward, but you're making very good points here in terms of the rest of the bell curve that's not here yet. And they're on the doorstep and they're interested, but they're not committed. Of course, they're going to have questions. And one of the biggest questions here is it going to work? How much is it going to cost me? How much time and money and resources is going to cost us to get to, version 1.0 deployed? And is it going to be successful? So we got to take the risk out of it. We've got to take the doubt out of it. And I think that's our job collectively here on this call. And then, I think the original question was really about, those organizations who they're stepping forward. Now, what advice do you have for them? This is really excellent stuff, guys.
I like the John vision about creating this vision, this path. But I like the tools that Salesforce provide us. We have a Agentforce ROI calculation where we're going to add the number of customer service employees you have, annual salary for those employees, and how many requests they get per day. Then Salesforce is going to calculate how much does it cost per year and how much you're going to save. Good. So you can have a brief idea. And also Salesforce provide 1,000 free Agentforce conversation or sessions. You just had to activate the Salesforce Foundation. It's a free upgrade. Then you select the product, free for 1,000 of those. Then you can start for free and test. Because even Mark, the Salesforce CEO, he was telling I just saw an interview, we are the only, Microsoft promise whatever Copilot, AI, but they don't put in their website. We Salesforce will have Agentforce on our website. We test how it works. Yeah. So now they're giving this opportunity for everyone to try, even kind of for free. You can test your agent, go to the trailhead and maybe try to build your own or hire a consultant, right?
It's really good.
So that's amazing, I guess, for everyone. And we can help them to we can help the user adoption per se, like guide them how to do it and show them this is free. You can try it. Let's try it. It's amazing.
I'm agreeing with you, Raphael. That is, help.salesforce.com is now 2 weeks old, fully live on Agentforce, and it has had a dramatic impact on the human effort to resolve cases and to log cases, and that they need to be telling that story even louder. What do you guys think about the $2 per conversation? I mean, I was looking at the chatter on the right as at the Salesforce announcement, and so many, I would say, nitpicky people were saying $2 per conversation. That's going to be very expensive. What are your comments?
What I've been hearing so far is that it's a rather loose number so far, Mark. It's not. I think that's kind of probably the maximum level that we can expect, but Salesforce is probably going to work with people to especially early adopters.
Yeah. So I mean, there are definitely volume discounts on that, and I think Salesforce will be able to play with that. I would look at it. I think initially people think, well, it's hard to compete with free, right? Because like when someone calls in, it's like I'm only paying for the 800 number, but really you're not. You're paying for the person's time, right? You're paying for the, especially some of these calls, they go really long, right? Like if they were really directed, they could be over in 10 minutes, but they're on the phone for 30 minutes. So if you compare it to like marketing, right? So marketing pays a certain cost per lead, right? And that whether that lead's going to work out or not is not guaranteed. And they've been comfortable in this model for who knows how long, many decades. This idea of a cost per lead, it takes what it takes, and some of those are going to work out and some of those are not. But if you average it across, this is really beneficial for our business. And so I think it's a reasonable, they're also encapsulating various metered costs into that and trying to make it really palatable and easy to understand and comprehend for people like us. Even with that, right? The idea of Salesforce Wallet and like having to predict all of this, it has some complexity. But I think what they've done is very helpful to us as customers, is trying to make it palatable and help you kind of think about, based on the ROI calculator that Raphael mentioned, what your potential outlay would be to add some level of predictability to it.
Obviously, a human picking up the phone, even a 10-second conversation, is costing more than $2. Absolutely. So I think what we're telling clients is, look, you're not going to have Agentforce on your contact me page where just anybody on the open internet can cost you $2, at 3 a.m. That's just not how you do it. You put this on Experience Cloud, you put it behind a password, or you at least put it behind a simpler authentication mechanism to say, give us your email and we'll look it up. If we have you as a contact, we'll open up the conversation. And if we don't, we won't. And so we're not going to spend $2 on just not useful people, right? We're going to spend it for our, 20,000 of our best friends in our CRM, and that's gonna work well. I don't think that $2 is expensive at all. It gets very expensive if you just leave it out on the contact me page.
Yeah, and I think that's a great example of where a standard Einstein bot is probably better, tailored to handle that, kind of front page element, try and triage those easy conversations around address, working hours, common questions, knowledge-based articles, whatever it might be. And then ultimately the first escalation is to maybe an Agentforce bot, right, when it gets to a certain level, or when you validate their credentials or something that makes them valuable and qualifies them to kind of go to that next step.
Absolutely. Well, folks, this is a very exciting time to be in the Salesforce ecosystem. Every week, something really significant happens, and it layers onto our awareness and our excitement level. I want to say to our listeners, please contact us. We'll put the contact info up on the on the podcast itself, and send us your questions and suggestions, things you want to hear more about. We really want to hear from you guys in terms of what's interesting to you, and I want to thank our panelists today. Great knowledge, great insights, and really great stories from the real world. Thank you so much. Thanks everyone, and we'll see you again for January episode.